right, welcome to the Countertop podcast. We appreciate you guys stopping by. This is our new one for 2021. Took a little break at the end of 2020 to kind of rejuvenate and hopefully bring you guys some great topics. So we appreciate you coming back. Or if you're finding us new, we really appreciate that as well. So make sure you give a like, subscribe, comment, share, whatever you can do. We greatly appreciate it. And this is a group that we kind of all throw in topics that we find interesting, that may be political, maybe interesting in the science field, medical, anything that we want to touch on, we do. So my topic, I'm going to just jump into it right away, is just recently an article came out about Germany wants to form a U.S. and EU alliance for a Marshall Plan for Democracy. This all kind of pertains to the Capitol building, the recent riots there that they stormed the Capitol. If you haven't seen the news or aren't in touch with any social media, you've probably missed it, but I don't think that's possible at this point. I kind of just found it interesting just because some of us may or may not agree with the Capitol riots. And so that's kind of where this statement is a little alarming in a sense of major global governments connecting to each other to, enact possible martial law and those type of things across countries, as well as their comment, it is for democracy, but you think of sometimes when a situation may not be, the same democracy that we think of. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts with, these riots that recently happened and then Germany coming out and saying something like this.
I mean, I would think that it would be worrisome because it kind of plays into conspiracy theorists and just people that worry about things like New World Order. The more large countries that get together and try to come up with one governing style that is different from all three of the governing styles that those countries currently use, then it's a little worrisome.
See, I viewed that a little bit differently because I pulled up that article when he said it, and basically the original Marshall Plan was used in 1948 to rebuild 18 war-torn countries, including Germany as one of the biggest beneficiaries of that. But also, the I didn't view liberal democracy as being a type of democracy. Think free democracy, and I think what
I agree. I didn't mean it liberal democracy in
right.
itself, just democracy in general, because
Right.
we're not technically a democracy. We were not built on being a democracy. And I don't think, I mean, EU does not run as a democracy, I don't believe. I don't know how Germany operates, to be honest, but
they still have a Kaiser.
yeah.
I'm just kidding. I don't. No, they have a. Don't they have a prime minister?
I thought Germany did. I know.
I think so. I know
UK does. I don't know if that.
Hey, let's listen to three guys speculate.
Yeah.
That'd be
I mean,
episode title.
That's the toughest thing about this article coming out, is that it is all just speculation.
Yeah.
Anything we talk about, though, in general, is mostly speculation.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. And that's where I thought it was just an interesting article, and especially with things that are going on in the United States currently, that's where it becomes a little more, where do the
yeah, but I
lines
think
get
this is something as old as there's been countries, though, that says, hey, I'll watch your back. Like, I don't want your form of government to fall. And so you make those agreements between governments anyway. It's actually, we, before we were a country, formed a pact with another country saying, we'll watch each other's backs.
Yeah.
And so that's what I view it as saying, there's some risk, right? We're global economies. There is joint agreements across the globe. There is some mutual benefit between countries to assure that, hey, obviously your little rental car mobs, cops couldn't stop a mob from going into your capital, and everyone's played risk, right? What happens in your capital building? So you're like, if you can't protect yourself, and it's been going good for, a couple hundred years here, it's in our best interest to make that last. And I think that's more of the, you know,
Well, they need to come up with a new name besides Marshall Plan for Democracy.
Yeah, I don't think that means what most people
I
think it
know.
would mean,
Just
but
off the top, when you see
Right.
that's what drew me to the.
but
All right,
to
Alex
it.
Jones.
at the same time, how does this differ from the UN? Why are we not, I don't know what the word is, not including the other countries that are in the UN in this? You would think that they might want to have some input on that, but then again, this is a whole different scenario. It's not going to be something to replace the UN, so I don't know. I would have to learn more about it. It seems like it was just recently announced, so it would be interesting to see where they go with it.
Yeah,
I would,
and it may just be also Germany's way of putting their foot down to saying, "Get your crap together."
right.
You know, we
Yeah.
need to do something. If not, and also kind of shaking its, see if anything falls off the tree when they shake it a little bit.
Well, and
Sure,
several
there's a
other
lot of
countries.
countries.
Yeah, lots of countries this week had came out and said, "Hey, do you guys want us to tell you how democracy works or a peaceful transition of power?"
Yeah.
Like we got hammered by the globe saying, "The hell
Because
y'all doing?"
yeah,
I just like
it
which
was
countries
ridiculous.
came
The
out
whole
and said
situation was ridiculous.
Right.
We're basically the laughing stock
Turkey.
of the entire world. So
Yes, we are. Rightfully so, well deserved. We
yeah,
we fought for several years to make sure we, someone made a joke on the interwebs about it. It was, coming from a UK's person's point of view with Brexit. Like we thought we had the news cycle for the first year. We just got out, and then here comes America again, shoving us off the dumbass chart. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
it
I
was
definitely.
Turkey was the first one who came out. Turkey says, "Hey," you're like, "Oh."
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a lot of things going on right now, but that's one I just caught my eye and thought it was interesting. And like you said, why isn't all countries in UN? And it's just more of an overall arching process of the UN to help each other in those times of democracy or issues
yeah,
like this. So
yeah. And the fact that it is a worldwide economy, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that other countries are taking interest in preventing the fall of the United States, if you want to call it that.
yeah,
The
well,
no, on the kind of a similar note, did you see that Canada's was their feds were thinking about listing the Proud Boys as a terrorist organization?
did not see that.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, totally didn't have it pulled up, but let me work on that quick while you two talk about something else. Hint, hint.
Well, I was also gonna just came out as well as Iraq has issued arrest warrants for Trump. Did you see that?
Who did?
Iraq has issued.
Was that for killing the general back when?
Yep.
Wow, they're slow.
So I guess they just went through the trial or whatever you want to say.
Okay.
Trump over drone strikes that killed the Iranian general. I would try to pronunciate the name, but I'm gonna butcher the.
Iran or Iraq is
Iraq. Iraq courts orders Trump arrest over Somalian drone.
over the killing
drone
of an
strike.
Iranian general.
I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah. So. Okay, so
I think
Iran's already issued a warrant for Trump arrest in June, and asked Interpol to relay it as a so-called red notice to other police forces around the world.
This says a judge in Baghdad issued the warrant for Trump over the killing of an Iraqi paramilitary leader during that same strike. So apparently there was more than just the Iranian general. It was a higher up in Iraq's government as well.
That makes more sense. 2 arrest warrants.
I don't think that's uncommon, though.
No,
I mean,
100%.
it's
It's just their way of doing their due diligence.
what else are you gonna do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It also seems like they're trying to strike while we're down.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And it's the time to do it when everyone, especially against Trump, it just puts him further down in that hole with everything else going on.
So there's lots of topics for this, but Blair, Minister Blair is considering it. They're trying to push it through. Um, Power at the national security and law enforcement agencies are very active, engaging in monitoring activities of these groups and gather evidence required to support the determination of a terrorist organization. So it should be coming soon. Not much else to add to that because I know we have such better topics like, hey, did you realize that someone got kicked off of Twitter?
I have no idea who. Who would that be?
Oh yeah. Turns out the president was kicked off of Twitter, Facebook, and if you go further into Reddit, Pornhub, and I don't know, any organization like Dairy Queen has also kicked him off. Yeah,
Dairy Queen has a social media platform.
no, but
No, he's just banned for life.
Just has no reward points anymore.
Yeah, I know. Honorary degrees have been pulled from Trump as well from 2 different universities. It's something happened recently, and so I just, we had talked earlier in podcast maybe 5 about whether or not Twitter could remove somebody. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, and
Yep.
we generally said, well, it's a private company, it can do whatever it wants. So has that changed? Mine's kind of laughing over here, but Ray, you got any thoughts or changes on that?
I mean, so my topic was similar to this, and I think my thoughts have changed.
Really?
Not necessarily about one social media, but you have these tech giants that are now censoring whole other platforms. And so at what point does this spectrum get so wide that it then does become a free speech issue, because these are the social media companies that are used by the majority of the populace, and the companies that own and or control these social medias are now destroying their competition through making web servers unavailable and taking it off the Google and Apple Play Store. I understand
So
that the other social medias are generally echo chambers and they're not policed as well, but free speech is free speech, no matter if one set of people agrees with it or not.
see, that's awesome because I was thinking because the reason they didn't get kicked off the internet, they got kicked off of AWS.
Yeah.
And AWS is a service offering from Amazon that basically hosts, stores, maintains, monitors, and overall handles the server operation, troubleshooting, all of these sweet packages that include licensing and all these deals that a person can elect to have them host their websites. And you begin to design your website based on that AWS platform. All that happened was a company said, if you don't adhere to our terms of services, then we're going to get the switch. And they chose, like I said, that service offering, understanding they're not kicked off of the internet.
Yeah. And
They
they've
just have
brought
to
that up.
rewrite their front end.
The founders of Parler have said that. They said they've had backup plans in place because they saw this coming. So I get that aspect of it. I'm more upset about the fact that Google Play and the Apple App Store are able to censor an entire social media outlet because of perceived concerns by some people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get that. But then
I
it's
think,
like,
doesn't this tie this back into almost a utility of a sense, with social media becoming more and more of a
see, but internet
use.
is a utility. And we talked about that. We didn't talk about social media because social media is different.
But kind of stemming into that same
Well,
realm.
it's foundationally different, but the fact that it is so relied upon these days for widespread communication, it's hard for me because it is a fine line. Obviously, you want companies that are private to have their protections to be able to handle terms of service and the user base as they see fit.
Mhm.
But when you are generally only removing one side of the equation of a split in speech, it's generally conservative extremes are the ones being removed. If you look at the situations, I mean, it's really hard being someone who supported the protests this past summer and the basis of what's going on and their freedom of speech at the same time, because some of it was being restricted, but not quite to the same extent that it is now for conservatives because a small group of people stormed the Capitol. It just it seems odd to me that that Google and Apple have so much power to wipe that app off, and there's still ways around it to get that app, but it limits accessibility for people. I
Yeah,
don't know.
and then
It's just it's hard being in the middle because I don't give a shit about Parler. There was a I run a gun page on Instagram, and there's a mass exodus of people that I follow or people that I associate with on the platform
mhm.
after Instagram's terms of service update that were going to Parler and MeWe. And I didn't make that transition because I think I'd rather stay on Instagram and fight for my ability to speak freely on Instagram if it does not violate their terms of service.
Mhm.
I would rather do that than jump to an echo chamber like we had talked about before because I don't see the necessity of another social media platform like this, but I still think they should be allowed to exist and freely accessed by the
Mhm.
populace that chooses to use that over another social media.
Yes, it's funny. It is because I'm still in the same. I thought about that quite a bit, and I still very much go, you're not, you made it difficult for someone, but you're not censoring them. And you can't claim that Trump has been censored
I
because
don't think Trump has been censored, but
because he has an entire press
Yeah.
office
team,
at his
yeah.
disposal, and he could literally say, "Hey, camera." Um, so no, I don't feel bad for him, but it is interesting now that it's so visible what we talked about so many months ago, kind of forethought, right? That now it is the point where it challenges that original perspective because it's had both ends since then, and it's the 10th day of the year.
Yeah. It just seems like there's a lot of hypocrisy in social media and big tech, which there always has been, but the worse and worse it gets, the more it fuels a divide that the media, social media, and big tech have been pushing for decades. So it just, at what point does it end until you've got an entire idealism of people that's now looking for another platform that they're able to associate with people that are like-minded with them? And at what point does Facebook and Instagram and Twitter kick off so many people that have dissenting opinions from them that it then becomes a liberal echo chamber?
So, and I don't know about what point, because this is like, is it a hill or mountain? At what
Yeah.
point does the counter opinion mount to organized insurrection? So on that one, if you were to say in a conversation, break it up into two separate points. Is anybody okay with organizing terrorist activities on social media platforms? Raise your hand if you think it's okay if terrorists organize on Facebook.
Yeah.
No one, right? That's not the question. It's, can you have a separate opinion? Well, that's a different set of data that goes, okay, they may discourage, they may set the advertising, they reroute your paths. We all talk about those are separate issues too. But is it okay if someone has a differing opinion? And how many of those cases have been deleted just because they have different opinions? Not many,
Yeah.
right? They're normally that fringe side, and those aren't the things you're talking about when you're making your point.
Yeah.
You're
That's
over
true.
here going again, looking ahead. If it's here, this is the goalpost, and you want to move it here, you being a traditional, in the sense of the word Republican type view set, saying there is tradition here that says it's going to keep encroaching and I don't want it to do that, right? That's what your concern is. It's
Yeah.
not this argument over here, which we're dealing out today, which everyone would say, no, that's not good.
Yeah. I think you're right. Looking forward, my issue is not with the platforms themselves, and I have said that before, I believe. It's just, I guess it just boils down to the fact that so much in the media and everything that people see these days is influenced by the opinions on the extremes, and no one is looking at the normal American's way of life and opinions. And so you have these sweeping changes that get enacted for one extreme, which then makes it uncomfortable for everyone else in between the extremes. So
Which is
that's where it's hard.
interesting.
You're
Yeah.
you're you're governing and limiting the majority of people to satisfy or uh whatever,
But
punish
yeah.
the few.
Placate, isn't that the right
Yes.
word?
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, if we just keep playing to extremes, then it doesn't work out for anybody.
And that's really interesting too, because how many of you read Section 230 of
I
the
skimmed it.
communications? Yeah, essentially, what Section 230 says is that the ISP or internet website can't be held liable for the things said or posted by its users. To me, there isn't on either side of the conversation, based on what we're talking about now, there isn't a benefit to getting rid of that Section 230. Section
No.
230 is kind of why we're the bastion of free speech on the internet.
Yeah, I don't
And
disagree with 230 at all, like some people do,
right,
because you look at things like the Commerce and Arms Act or whatever it is that gun manufacturers can't be sued by third parties for the actions of people that purchased their firearms since they were not responsible for that individual. I find this a similar argument just for social media since it's gotten so big. They need to be not held accountable for what their users are doing because they can't control that.
and if you eliminate 230, in my humble opinion, the conversation that we're having right now would be null and void because it would be forced censorship through liability and
Yeah.
litigation.
Yeah, 100%. It's not a
So,
world I want to live in.
has anybody heard anybody say they're against Section 230 and given me a logical reason why?
No. I think a lot of people's opposition to 230 does come from Trump's echo chamber communities because that's the only side I generally hear it from. I have not heard any actual dissenting opinions of 230 from people that I know, especially people that are in the tech space.
I found it very weird and threatening on the other side of the argument on the Twitter gate or whatever we want to call it, is that even my senator called out immediately saying, I am more fervently against Section 230 than I ever was before, determined to get rid of it. And you're sitting here going, bruh, that would force them to get rid of you, not get rid of them. Now, obviously, it's going to crash their advertising dollars and fundamentally upset social media. Or we wouldn't have reviews. We couldn't have a Yelp. We couldn't have a review it section on anything because
Yeah.
any comment would be cause litigation ownership to the ISP. Even it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's it. I didn't know.
No, I think you're 100% right. That basically allows the freedom of speech online because of that 230. It allows companies to safely, either social media or like you're talking about Yelp and Amazon, even for example, of reviews. One bad review and you're getting a lawsuit. And it's I think the gun example, Ray, that you talked about is a perfect example of gun manufacturer can't be responsible for its actions of its users.
And I feel that about many manufacturers and stuff like that. People have equated or man, I am really short on words today, but car manufacturers can't be held liable for drunk drivers killing people. Yeah, they make comparisons like that, and it makes sense for a lot of different manufacturing industries and manufacturers in general. So this is no different. It's just modernizing with the times.
And it would be, say, if you had a Times reporter and the reporter was underneath the payroll of Times who made defamation claims against somebody or had this smear, the Times would be liable for that slander through their employee. I mean, that you can sue the employee and you could sue the company for printing and not catching the editing, and once that passes through, it owns it.
So if I play devil's advocate, would that make journalism go back to the way it used to be?
Go back to the way it used to in the sense of they need to actually do research on what they're posting.
Yeah.
Since they don't do that anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting because the newspaper is an entity that operates on a hosting service like AWS or others, many others, that then they are ran and operated on top of an internet service provider that does the actual distribution of the information through the hard lines and
Yep.
things like that. This Section 230 says all parties throughout that entire exchange are not liable for one individual link.
Yep. So if you get rid of 230 and everybody's liable, then AWS and other server providers go, you're full
I
of
think
bad news or these articles that aren't true.
I think there's other concerns with it now that I'm reading through more of 230 instead of just skimming it. It does provide a lot of protections for internet service providers and software providers and server providers. But I think the one section in here that people have issues with is it's section C, number 2, civil liability. It says no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be held liable on account of any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, however you pronounce that, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected, or B, any action taken to enable or make available information, content providers, or other technical means to restrict access to the material described in paragraph 1. So I think their issue with that is now they're worried that social media will be able to unconstitutionally censor people's speech, which I guess just ties back into our our discussion before, saying as a private company held to the same standards that a public space would be as far as freedom of speech. So, I mean, I think that's the only section that people really have an issue with.
And I would generally say, my opinion holds that no, you're not afforded all the same as you would in a public space, in a private space,
Yeah.
whether it be digital or physical.
Yeah, no, I think we agree on that across the board.
Yeah,
Just with some caveats.
I'm
right?
still torn. I'm only torn because I want a more solid line of what a public space and a private space is for a company that now has a majority of the users in the United States as part of their user base.
So, would you be interested in, I know this is going to make your heart hurt, a government purchase of Twitter and then have it run by the government as a public space, given the existing user base, and there be Twitter 2.0 that could operate the exact same as it does today?
Yeah, see, this is this is where I get torn because I
Right,
would be
yeah.
against the government's hand in it. So that's what's tough. That's why it's so horribly tearing for someone like me who believes that people should have their freedom of speech there, but I don't think it should be regulated by the government. So
Yeah, and
Isn't
yeah,
the
that's
better solution to this is getting a company that understands these far left, far right fringe ideas as not everyone's ideas, and helps to counsel a council of people to help keep
I
the
think-
majority of the people happy with on that platform.
I think Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram try to appeal to the middle of the road crowd, but inadvertently are catering to one side of the vocal minority compared to the other. Whether, I mean, there's no official statements about that or anything,
Yeah.
but just through their actions.
And so if they did a better job, would that help solve the problem where a government wouldn't have to purchase a public space social
Probably.
media?
But
we take Times Square, that big screen. I hear they have a big TV. And it goes like, number kicked off on the left, number kicked off on the right, number of mediations settled out of court.
Yeah.
And you just have this scoreboard up there. You're going, they're doing good today. The number gets skewed at the end of the day by the ringing of the bell, and you're like, ooh, they had a bad day. They just have like some Futurama shit with like the table over there, people looking up going, ticker tape running out, even though they're in space.
Oh goodness. No, but I think there's a lot there that could or couldn't be done, and I would hope that a public, a company would be willing to take those chances to try to appease both sides of the aisle in a effort to help freedom of speech.
I mean,
I would say,
it's all still in its infancy when you look at the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things with the way tech has accelerated. So I still am leaning towards you guys' opinion of what we've discussed as far as these companies should be protected from any kind of potential litigation or liability for something that they can't control. It's just going to be interesting to see where it goes, because as it becomes more utilized by everyone, it's obviously going to have to go through some changes, which I think this is just the beginning to keep them from being held accountable for things that they can't control. So,
and there is legitimate, I guess, legitimacy to the claim that there is, monopoly type structures within like Amazon when it comes to the unilateral decision by a single corporate chain, uh, understanding that they could systematically eliminate down through a columns without having to look at different terms of services or different rules and how these things go, where it might be less likely for the tech companies to unilaterally cut a person's digital footprint in one day. Yeah, certainly, I think that's something we could talk about. That's has legitimacy going. Yeah, maybe their hosting might have a different term of service than overall, so that way they could be kicked off an app store, and if that was done, people would be, yeah, but they got kicked off an app store and they got their AWS and all of their
yeah,
advertising dollars. All their subsequent partners now have said, we don't want to work with you because you don't meet our standard of how to be profitable in this market.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was my biggest hang up. And a lot of people I've seen, that was their hang up, is it was all done at the same time, as if all of these tech companies came together and made it a concerted effort to kick this social
Mhm.
media platform off of the internet, basically. Tried. Obviously, they didn't, and there is other backups that you can do to still access this app, but that's what it seems like.
Yeah, that's a nice conversation because it's not trying to go to the fundamental of your principles, saying, if you break the argument apart further, right? It's like it's not saying, can I still have the ideal that um, private companies should have the ability to operate to their culture,
Yeah.
right? Of being accessible or not, and yada yada yada. People were bringing up the whole cake to a gay birthday party, and
Yeah.
that versus what's happening now, and essentially, we want companies to, be able to conduct themselves as they see fit based on their culture and let the markets decide whether or not they buy their products. But you could also say, is there adequate protections for the average consumer that their company structure doesn't allow them to adversely impact my blah? I ran out of shit to pull out of my ass there. Sorry.
You covered it. So,
Yeah.
all right. Any other topics we want to throw out? I know this one is kind of a downer to end or bring in the 2021.
I got two. I got two quick ones we can end with a little better note.
Okay, that's what we need.
All right. First one. Did you know that Canadian insurance companies cloud seed
I did.
or seed clouds to avoid high insurance claims due to hail?
Yeah.
Wow, how much does that cost?
It's not too bad. I mean, they do it for parades.
I didn't realize
It's a
they did it for parades.
what? Oh
I didn't.
yeah, yeah. People change clouds all the time.
Doesn't
You didn't know that?
well,
Even for general like harvesting and like
Well,
there's government.
for parades. I'm not going. Yeah, let's make
Oh
sure it
yeah,
doesn't rain
parade.
today.
Yeah, no, you could do that.
Well, I know you could do that, but it's
Yeah, they do that.
who approves that?
You don't have to.
You don't have to approve.
I don't know actually how, but
doesn't that seem
Yeah.
crazy? Like, hey, I don't want it to rain today. I don't want it to
Yeah.
hail today.
I'm sorry, but they've been doing that on a wide scale.
Wow,
That's just how it goes.
that's mind blown. I'm kind of pissed right now.
Oh,
No,
Are you
yeah,
just mad
no.
because it's snowing up there and you don't want it to snow,
no,
or like?
I'm just like the climate effect of something like that. How what's the science behind something like that? And if a
That
cloud
doesn't.
in Canada doesn't hail, in South Africa is there snakes falling from the sky? Something crazy. A cause and effect for it.
Yeah, no, we do that. Pretty much anybody at any local municipal airport can receive a number of. It's pretty much fine metal fumes, the little smart particles that are released, and somehow it congeals the water or forces it to congeal to dump any precipitation faster, and so you're essentially uh,
Not allowing it to unfreeze.
X-lax, X-lax for clouds.
Good comparison.
Yeah. So anyway, Canadian insurance companies get together and they work together to seed clouds to prevent insurance claims.
They must be working with Germany, the U.S., and the U.K.
Also, Japan is currently developing wooden satellites to cut space junk. So talked very early on. That's something I care about, and so they're trying to figure out a more intelligent design to adequately protect instruments, but provide it to be not a future issue. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting that someone's actually taking the steps to try and develop something to cut down on that problem that is not widespread information, I feel like,
Huh.
before it becomes an issue, basically. More of an issue.
And you
And
said wooden satellites?
yeah, wooden, yeah.
That's
Because it
impressive.
doesn't. Yeah. So I mean, we'll see, but hopefully that comes soon.
How'd you,
And one,
how would you like that phone call? You're a wood maker for 50 years, and you got their local, NASA government calling you, going, "Hey, we need you to build a satellite."
and make sure to use dovetail joints.
Yeah.
Your regular Elmer's wood glue is not gonna cut it, though.
I'm sure he's making bank on that one. Wow.
Yeah, next thing you know, kids with popsicle sticks are going to be in their third grade classroom making satellites.
Right.
Yeah.
We can send that one up there, Timmy.
They make wood 3D printer filaments. Are they going to consider using that for their parts?
I'm sure this was mostly in the concept and proofing, like the
Yeah.
minimal viable product kind of
Wow.
stages.
Interesting.
And then lastly, just for another feel good one, they have developed footwear to assist in seniors from not falling over. They have little treadmills in the hills, and so it has a axial sensor that whether it be a gyroscope or other, just basically going over there saying, "Hey, all right, when you fall in," and then it adjusts quickly. And so they've been putting these old guys on this rotating base strapped to like a little safety harness, and they'll just like move it suddenly, and then the shoes take over. It's kind of interesting. I'm not gonna lie. So.
Life Alert's pissed right now.
I mean, so you've all seen videos of people slipping on ice, and it's just like constant slipping on ice.
Yeah.
What if these shoes go wrong and they're just constantly correcting, and you get stuck in an infinite loop of slipping on ice in those shoes? Then what happens?
Hopefully they run out of batteries eventually.
You got a human slinky.
Oh goodness.
I didn't think of that. Thank you.
I just
He
want
would go
to see a meme of that, a GIF that's just going over and over.
You just got like, you go out to get your paper in the morning, you look across the street, and Bob is sitting here like an infinite loop of falling. You're like, oh, dude, I haven't got my coffee yet. Just
Oh goodness, that's too funny. All right, well, we'll end it on that happiness. Once again, we appreciate you guys stopping by. Hopefully 2021, that sounds weird to say, is better for all of us, and we will be providing more content hopefully throughout the year with the podcast, possible some gaming fun, maybe some streaming. But the biggest thing is we just want everyone that is watching and listening to be a part of that. So make sure you comment, like, subscribe, share. We're on all the major platforms where you can find us. So once again, we appreciate you stopping by. Thanks.